Welcome, everybody, to the Beer Guys Radio Show, this special edition of the Beer Guys Radio Show. We've had a busy year, Brian. We've had a busy year. So we always do our Oktoberfest blind tasting, but in order to work it into the schedule, we just had to do this as an extra episode this year.
That's right.
We typically go over some Oktoberfest traditions, talk about some funny facts and stuff, but we're going to be very soon with their beer garden doing a full Oktoberfest show. So this is just going to be our blind tasting. We put it out there because we know a lot of people enjoy this. We enjoy it. We get to taste a lot of beers and have a good time. So this is Beer Guys Radio. I'm Tim Dennis. As always, Brian Hewitt. How you doing?
I'm doing great. It's our much-awaited and anticipated annual Oktoberfest blind tasting show. We did it blind again. Somehow we pulled it together with the help of our panel or council of Nates. I forget what I even
Council
called
of Nates. Council of Ricks. That's right.
Yeah. Of Ricks, yeah.
Yeah.
In this case, it's the Nates. So what's going on, Mo Mike Nay?
Not much. I've got, I'm enjoying the Mo microphone privileges while they last, and I'm happy to facilitate the blind taste testing tonight.
And the other Nates on the other side of the table?
Yeah, usually
Party Nate.
Party Nate, yes.
Mo Mike Nate and Party Nate.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, he was breaking out swords and shields and stuff earlier. I mean, he knows how to party.
Yes.
The last couple times I administered, so it's interesting having Mike this time. It's great.
See what's going on with it. Well, I tell you what, let's jump right into it. We tasted 10 beers, and we did the tasting before we turned the mics on. We figured we'd just go through it, taste the beers, make our judgments. So these are the beers that we had. These are not in the order that we consume them, and we'll get into the order as we'll talk about each beer just a little bit, get everybody's thoughts on those. Then at the end of the show, we will release our personal top three as well as a cumulative top three. So the beers this year that we're tasting, we mix it up, Brian. We did 5 and 5. 5 domestics that have pretty wide distribution, or 5 American Oktoberfesty beers that have pretty wide distribution. And then we had 5 from Germany. So there was a pretty good selection out there. You know what? We normally throw a couple Georgia in to show some love, but
sure.
We do a lot of Georgia stuff, and we want to make sure that the beers we talk about here, you can get them pretty much anywhere.
Pretty much everywhere.
I think most of these are going to have a wide enough distribution. They should come to where you are more than likely. But to get into the list, we have from Samuel Adams, one that we get on the list every year. Their Oktoberfest, again, that is an American beer, coming in at 5.3 ABV. From Bell's Brewery, we have their Oktoberfest beer. It's a Marzen. The Sam Adams is also a Marzen style. 5.5% ABV on that one. We have Yingling's Oktoberfest, another Marzen, at 5.3%. From Victory Brewing Company, their Fest beer, which is a Fest beer, at 5.6%. From Sierra Nevada, and I will not say this right, Kehrwieder Creative Brewery.
That sounds really close to me.
Pretty close, right? Okay, so that's Oktoberfest, which is a Fest beer style, and it's on the higher end of ABV here at 6%. So, Warsteiner going to Germany here. We have their Oktoberfest Marzen at 5.9%. From Paulaner, we have their Oktoberfest Marzen at 5.8%. From Hacker Shore, we have their Oktoberfest Marzen at 5.8%. Hofbrauhaus, we have their Fest beer at 6.3%. Which I think is the strongest. Is that right, Brian?
I think so. The second in line is the Sierra Nevada.
So okay. Yeah. And Anger Oktoberfest Marzen at 5.8% ABV. So all of these, I think, what do we have? Maybe 0.8% of variance here?
Yeah, it's pretty tight.
One, because we have one at the Sam Adams at 5.3.
Yeah.
And Hofbrauhaus at 6.3.
So it's, so 1%.
Yeah.
I didn't do the actual average, but I think the average ABV of the American brewed Oktoberfest beers is lower than the German ones. And I also noticed, and I don't have the stats in front of me, that of the ones reported, I think the ABV or the IBUs were also higher in the German beers than they were in the American beers. So
interesting.
A little bit more hop bitterness in the German ones.
Interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Well, y'all, you know what? We're going to throw out some sponsor shout outs right now because even though this is a bonus episode, our sponsors really make us able to do this. They cover the cost, man, our crazy expenses that we have. But of course, the Nest sponsors our beers of the week. We thank them. Sponsor for a long time. We have a good time hanging out there. Wings Barbecue Craft Beer, good place to be. They're running some specials now. They want you to have a lunch that's affordable, so they do some $10 pork plates, Brian. Check it out. Some good deals there. It's tough to find a full lunch at like $10. especially something like that. Also, our friends at Truck and Tap, Food Trucks Craft Beer, they have locations in Woodstock, Duluth, Alpharetta, and now Lawrenceville, as well as they have the taps at Feast at the Battery here in Atlanta. And we also, Terrapin Brewery Atlanta, also at the Battery, more barbecue, craft beer. That's kind of Terrapin's brew lab. They don't call it that anymore, but it's where a lot of beers get started for Terrapin.
In my heart, it's still the brew lab, and I've even heard them talk about it as the brew lab, so they still kind of feel about that way. But officially, Terrapin Brewery Atlanta.
But there's always something, and just super nice people there, man. We always have a good time, and there's fun stuff on tap. They always have a big variety on the tap list there. A lot of people like to say all beers are IPAs, but they're not.
They're not.
All beers are not IPAs, and you will find that out there at the Terrapin Brewery Atlanta. So thank you so much to our sponsors for making this and every episode we do possible. Well, guys, we're going to dive into some any initial thoughts before we get going here. Any overall thoughts? Or do we want to maybe do that at the end of the show?
Maybe
we'll talk about it. Okay.
Feeling too much,
all right. So the first beer that we tried was Victory Fest Beer. Party Nate, what are your thoughts on beer number 1?
The first thought that I had was it was drier than I was expecting.
Okay.
The finish was drier.
All right.
And I really enjoyed it. There was kind of a caramel note that was predominant to me, and it was hard to beat that. I'm gonna just
just out of the gate.
Out of the gate,
strength,
I was surprised because sometimes Oktoberfest they come off a little strong or they come off a little weak, and some of them are a little more sour. But this one was clean. It was good. It was dry. It was what I expected from an Oktoberfest.
Good stuff. Yeah, and that's what you want. You want your expectations made. Mike Nate, what was your thought on numero uno?
I'm gonna have to parrot Party Nate's sentiment that I got a lot of caramel and full body off of this one. While it didn't, it didn't turn out to be my favorite of the lineup. It was definitely high enough up there that I thoroughly enjoyed this one.
Okay, very cool. Brian?
I revisited this one a couple of times. I liked it. I thought it was on the lighter side, nice, sweeter caramel malts, as has been said before. As I was trying it again later on, I even got a little bit of a pear in there. It was okay. It was enjoyable. I did like this one. So your thoughts, Tim?
My thoughts. So this one, again, like Party Nate, I said this one started off strong. Number 1, we started off strong with it. I got a bold toast note in there. I would say toast, along with some light malt sweetness as well as light hop bitterness. I thought it had a really good balance. Nate, kind of like you said, it met expectations, but it wasn't crazy in either direction. The flavors were there that I wanted to get from it. The notes were there, a good aroma. Hop bitterness was noticeable, but not overpowering. You bring that maltiness out. That's something I love. You know what? That flavor alone, that maltiness from Amber's, Oktoberfest, Marzens, Festbiers, and all that, to me, that says fall. That's a flavor that really brings me into the season there. So, which is one of the reasons I just hold out as long as I can before starting to drink those, because when I drink those and I put my body into fall mode, I want to know fall's around the corner, not in July.
I was definitely wondering as I was drinking this, because I found myself kind of favoring fest beers a lot, at least initially when we started the tasting. If it's because it's so warm outside and it's still technically summer, if I just haven't made that transition to desiring those, and there's definitely a time of the year where that is all I want to drink. But right now, I'm still very much in crispy boy mode.
Mm-hmm. I tell you what, man, I enjoy drinking. If it's a good beer about any time year round, I'll drink it. Stouts are for summer, as we said before. I'll get into a stout. But it is fun to kind of follow the beers of the season. You give your palate some variety there. Getting the crispy boys through the summer. And I still like the kettle sours, the Berliners and that, the lighter sours through the summer months.
Sure.
Pilsners, Kolsch, all of that through there. Get into the fall months. And y'all, I love, as much as I hate winter as a season, I love the beers of winter. The big barrel-aged barley wines, we get the big stouts and stuff. Those are nice.
I did, in fact, drink a Christmas beer that was left over from the Christmas show that I picked up after the show because it was our number one, and I drank one of those recently.
You're out of control, man.
Yeah,
You're just
I know.
I
just talked about all the Crispies I drank, but I also did drink one of those. So.
Madness, man, madness. Our second beer that we tried in the lineup was Warsteiner. We got into the Warsteiner there, and Mike, Nate, what was your thoughts on Warsteiner?
So this one for me was more easy drinking. I got a little bit of like a grassy note to it. Lighter, sort of light green, almost like lemongrass, that really played well with it being a little lighter body. Something that I could easily enjoy on like this warmer, we're still technically summer.
Yeah, we're 85
degrees.
Here. Sure.
This is a fest beer that I would gratefully have a Steiner of today.
A Steiner.
A Warsteiner?
He just invented the new glass size. We want to know what this is about. But Nate, I'm going to jump in and say I agree with you on the grassiness. I got that note in there too. I noted that it had a moderate hop aroma. Mm-hmm. Where some of the ones we drank were just non-existent on hop aroma. Some I thought the hop aroma was too much. Went a little too far. This was moderate. It was noticeable that there was hop aroma there. To me, it was very light on the palate, just super light. And I think that probably, in all honesty, is what let that grassiness shine through a little bit more, is that I didn't get a lot of the malt character in this one. So that grass was able to jump out and really be noticeable there. Overall, this ranked in the middle for me, I think, overall through the tasting. Was not one of my favorites, but it was, you know what, if I was somewhere and this is what was on tap and I was feeling festy, okay. Fine. That's what I would say, Brian. Brian, what would you say about this one?
This was my number two, and this is partly going back to what my thoughts about me still being into crispy boys right now, because this seemed like a beautiful transition from a lot of the Pilsners, especially the German Pilsners I've been drinking, over to the Oktoberfest style, because it had characters that reminded me of the Pilsners I've had. And I got to say that when we poured this, I could tell right away this was German. It had a little bit of that light struck funk that says, hey, I've traveled an ocean to get to you. And I'm like, yeah, this is German. So I knew that we were doing it blind, but I still knew this was a German one. At least a couple of other ones that we had, that it almost immediately, I'm like, oh, this is a German beer. You know, I
just let you know right away.
But I like this. This was one of my favorites.
And it's funny you got that, because in general, I think you have the palate of a goat. So the fact that stood out to you there, that's impressive.
Well, that's more of an aroma thing. So I mean, that's more nostrils.
The nostrils,
the palate.
Also the nostrils of the goat.
The nostrils.
That's it. So
yeah.
Party Nate. And you know what? I'm going to back up. I'm going to let everybody know why we call Party Nate, just so they can enjoy this. Nathan's last name is Donner. So the Party Nate isn't because he knows how to party. It's because of the Donner Party. But he knows how to party as well. So it could be both. Yeah. But Party Nate.
It's not the cannibals.
It's not fine young cannibals, man.
Beer 2, I initially came off of it thinking this is a little flat. It's very, very drinkable, very easy to just, sit back and not pay attention to it. I do agree with there was definitely more hop character on the nose than the first beer, but I wasn't super impressed, and maybe that actually is a good thing for an Oktoberfest. When you're wanting something that you're drinking a lot of, then it's just something that you have kind of in the background of the other festivities.
Yeah, it doesn't have to take the spot. And you know what? When Brian was talking about like being into the crispy boys now, the Pilsners and all that, Halfway Crooks, who we've mentioned on here 20 or 40 times or whatever, one thing about their beers is they're fantastic, but you don't have to put a lot of thought into them.
Yep.
You can sit in the upstairs patio and watch, maybe there's sheep herding on the TV, maybe there's a dog show, and you can sit and talk with your friends about that and enjoy a beer, and you don't have to overthink your beer. You just
it's a good beer. It's a good beer, and you just enjoy the time that you're having there.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's right. Enjoy the time, man. Don't put too much thought in the beer. You know it's a good beer, so just enjoy it. So.
But you can, if it's a really good beer, you can also and be rewarded by paying attention to it.
And I think that's the great thing, Brian, is a beer like that, it can be great and you don't have to think about it. But if you take the time to stop and think, you're like, wow, this is really good. But there's nothing going on there. Better, if you just want to, it's also just a good drinking beer. You don't have to overthink, Brian.
Yeah.
Which obviously the fact that we have several pages of notes, we have done a little.
We've overthought these beers.
Yeah. So our number 3 beer in the tasting, this was the Sierra Nevada one. That was their collaboration with Kehrwieder Creative Brewery, which is the way I'm going to say that. And Sierra Nevada's one, I think everybody really looks forward to this one in America. This is one that people want to get their hands on, the Sierra Nevada. Brian, what'd you think of Sierra Nevada's version this year?
So my notes, it was a very obviously a fest beer, and I found it to be fruity and hoppy, with a little bit of toastiness to it. Definitely visually, obviously a fest beer because of the straw color on it. And I think it was around this point in the tasting, I started noticing apple flavors in these, in very mild amounts. But I've always been a little sensitive to that, so a little bit, but I think not outside the realm of what's acceptable. So I thought this was okay. I wasn't over the moon about it. I have had it previously without giving it quite this much judgment, and I do find it to be a very drinkable beer.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So question for you. Do you think your opinion, and I don't know if anybody can answer this accurately, Nate, do you think your opinion would be different of the beer if you knew what beer you were drinking before you drank?
I think probably. I think I would probably, my brain would put some cues in there. Well, you have to like this. This is Sierra Nevada.
You're right.
And I didn't dislike it, but and I honestly, I knew what all the beers were going in, not which one specifically, but the actual roster. When I bought them, and I'm like, these are all respectable beers. I should like every single one of them. I didn't, but I should. And without knowing specifically which ones, it makes it easier to be honest. And I just think this was an okay beer. It wasn't
fair enough.
One of my favorites. So,
and like you mentioned, all the beers that we chose here, these are ones that we've had in the past that we've enjoyed. So this would be one that we would think going into it, we're going to like these.
Yes.
There was nothing we got that we were unsure of or anything. That's for sure. But Nate, Mike, Nate, what did you think of this one?
I only had a couple notes on this one. I went back to saying that it was light, easy drinking. I had like a spice blend flavor to it. Not quite the winter warmer spices, but definitely more of those fall seasonal spices. Got a little bit more of a savory note in this one. Super easy drinking. And Tim, you had a good point. As a facilitator of the blind taste testing order, I don't have the luxury of
being fully blind.
Being fully blind. And so part of the fun for me as a facilitator is watching you guys make your guesses and being like, oh, you're so close, or oh, you're way off. But I really appreciate the excitement here.
Yeah, it's fun, man. It's a good time. Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And Party Nate, you and I actually didn't know what we were getting into.
Oh, yeah.
So
I didn't even know the list of what was available. I came in thinking, well, I know that there's going to be Oktoberfest and Festbier. I didn't know what the options were. Yeah. And that was exciting.
It was fun for me too, because like Brian took care of the beers, gave them to Nate, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to look at the list. I'm going to go in blind, double blind.
Yeah.
There you go.
I give a lot of thought to the lineup of them, but I do have to say that picking them up this year, as a side note, it seemed like there were better options to buy, especially mass market U.S. labels, but also the German. It just seemed like there were more, and I'm not sure if that has to do with us recording the show a little earlier in the year than we typically do, and the options are still available, or if there just was a better array of options. But I was actually pleasantly surprised by what I could get rather easily this year compared to previous years. So,
that's good, man.
But I did spend a lot of time
there.
I did spend a lot of time looking at the list and agonizing over which ones would be on it. So, yeah, I definitely have that little bit of bias in there. So,
yeah, because to be honest, I'm not going to say we were lazy. I'll just say that we do this with some time crunch on us. Like there was anybody who remembers the Paste magazine beer tastings that they did.
Yeah,
these would be multi-week long tastings for them to put. There would be multiple rounds, and they may have 40, 50 beers on this. The dude at Paste that organized those, he was able to do that as part of a full-time job.
Yes,
that was something he could do for the magazine. We can't do that. We just can't put that kind of time into it. So we have to limit our list a little bit of what we taste. We could do 50, but the show would be trash.
Yeah,
or fun or great.
It would be a 6-hour episode, multi-part episode.
Like drunk guys talking on the radio. It'd be a great show.
Yeah, incoherent but entertaining. Yeah. Party Nate, what'd you think of Sierra Nevada?
It was immediately I got just fruit. All of the fruit. And I'm a big fan of lychee or lychee, depending on how you pronounce it. This was very, very strongly fruity. Not what you would expect with an Oktoberfest or a fest beer. It was good, but it wasn't what I expected. And so it didn't hit the top ranking for me, but I enjoyed it.
Okay, good enough, man. So for this one, the aroma, and I don't think I picked it up as fruit, but I said very sweet.
Yeah.
The aroma was very sweet to me. Something, and knowing in hindsight this was Sierra Nevada probably doesn't surprise me. The hops were more pronounced on this one. The bitterness, I think, on this was a little stronger, quite a bit stronger than the others here, which for me knocked it down. That's not what I'm looking for, in an Oktoberfest beer. For me, the flavors were kind of muddled because I think the hops were a little too dominant. So this one kind of landed middle of the pack for me. Actually, I think maybe on the lower end. So it wasn't my favorite this year. It was not my favorite. So
it wound up pretty far down the list for me.
Yeah,
things. Yeah, as much as I love Sierra Nevada, especially the Summerfest, this one wasn't nearly as high.
This wasn't the one. This wasn't the one. Well, our number 4 in the tasting was Anger. Going to Germany there. So, Brian, what was your thought on the Anger?
So this is I started noticing as I was going through more consistent themes, and I was really cueing in on the carbonation levels. And this one was soft and effervescent. Like it was a softness. There was light caramel. I got even a little bit of berry sweetness to it. And it lingered. It actually lingered pretty nicely. And I want to point out that Ayinger, in terms of untapped ratings of all the ones we're drinking, I believe has the highest rating overall. Right behind it is the Sierra Nevada. So this one should have done really well in our blind tasting. And for a while, this was in my top 3, but as we went on, it did drop off. So I think it was a good beer, but it did not beat some of the other ones out there.
The Sierra Nevada, was that rating specifically for this collaboration version?
This specific collaboration. It is a very popular collaboration, I believe. So,
Gotcha.
Yeah. The Ayinger is just overall, and that's actually really impressive for an overall Oktoberfest rating without a year designation on it. So Ayinger is a very popular, very highly rated one. So apparently we are wrong for not having this be our number 1, unless we did have it as our number 1.
Well, here's something I think interesting. We're looking at the ratings here, and you pulled these from Untapped. Is that right?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
None of these get over a 4.
Oh, no.
And I've gotten to where, I tell you what, if a beer starts getting down into the 3s, if you get below about a 3.8, I'm like, okay, this may just be okay, but we don't have one here that's the Ayinger 3.82, like you said, which just ekes out the 3.81 that Sierra Nevada has there. We also have some of these others. The Sam Adams is a 3.61, Bell's at a 3.66, Yingling at a 3.42, which I think is our lowest.
That is the lowest
on the Yingling there. Yeah. Victory at a 3.48. Again, we have Warsteiner 3.62, Paulaner to 3.68, Hackershore at a 3.69, and Hofbrauhaus at a 3.6. So, you know what? They're all pretty darn close, though. I mean, we're talking like 0.2, a quarter of a point separate.
A bunch in the 3.4s and a bunch in the 3.6s, and a lot of these are basically legendary beers that are made every year. So
Interesting.
I think it's just these are getting rated by all sorts of people. Some people only drink smoothie sours and easy IPAs.
Yeah.
I can see them not giving these as high a rating.
Just not hitting what they want out of a beer, even if it's perfect on the style.
Yeah, you also got to remember that because these beers are being more widely reviewed, you're having hundreds, if not thousands of reviewers, tens of thousands of reviewers, whereas some of these more niche...
140 reviews.
Yeah,
exactly.
Very limited, yeah. And everybody's a big fan already.
Yeah, they'll get a 4.2.
Before they even drink it.
The hype, man. Hype gives you points, that's for sure. Well, Brian, on number 4, I'm going to say I disagree with you, that I didn't think it was very good at all. I was kind of surprised because, again, one I definitely expected to like. I got a soapy. That's the soapy flavor
all right.
in this. It reminded me of like dishwater or something, which is something I'm not looking for in a beer, personally.
Do you feel cleaner having...
I do. The insides are definitely cleaner now.
That's a bonus.
Absolutely. But much like you, a softness in this one. So... but this one didn't impress me. I think I'm looking back at my notes, Brian. I think this may have been my bottom score. Nope. I have one other here that I took a little bit. Yeah, I have one other that I took a little bit lower, but it was on the lower end for me. Just didn't care for this one. So, Mike, Nate, what'd you think of it?
I'm going to agree with Tim on your estimation, your review that it was soft. With Brian, I got the more effervescence. It seemed like it had a way more carb to it than most of the other beers we had today, and by extension, it gave me a pillowy mouthfeel. It was just really easy drinking, had a little bit of that light caramel notes to it.
Okay, yeah,
just run of the mill.
just okay, huh? All right. Party Nate, what'd you think?
It was okay. I didn't get the soapiness. I mean, I get the softness. Like, Dawn soap is known for being soft, right?
Takes the grease out of the way, man.
Exactly. But I don't think I got that flavor. I definitely think after all of them, I was like, oh, this one's a contender, and then it dropped off really quickly. I'll just summarize by saying that I think it was an okay beer. Way less than what I think I was expecting.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Again, I think we had high expectations for all of these, based on what they were. So, our fifth beer, middle of the pack here, Sammy Adams, Brian.
Yeah.
Which is one we all always look forward to trying. Sometimes in their mix pack, they'll have both a Marzen and a Festbier.
Yeah.
So, what was the style in this one this year?
I believe it's just a Marzen.
It is a Marzen.
Their Festbier a couple years back was really amazing.
And I think it only came in the mix pack. I think you get the Marzen in a sixer or whatever, but I think the Festbier, you had to get their fall seasonal mix pack in order to
I need to look
get
for
the
that.
Festbier.
I don't know if they even
see if
did
they
that
still
this
do
year.
that. Maybe they do.
And
Maybe
I think
they
one
do.
of those years, the Sam Adams Marzen and Festbier were like side by side in a rank
in the top three.
Yeah, like 1 and 2 or 2 and 3 something, weren't they? That's right. Well, y'all, I will say I dug this one this year. This one did well for me. I got a caramel malt aroma. I got fairly drier on the palate. I would have liked just a little more maltiness on the palate. That I thought the malt flavor was a little bit light. Definitely had the smell of a Marzen. Again, that more toasty caramel malt aroma there. Got that. But as I swirled it in the glass a little bit and let it open up some, it did give me a little more malt there. I also got like the toast and specifically the crust of toast, kind of that darker, crusty edge there. Also, I made a note on this one. I thought it was more complex than a lot of the other ones. I think it had a nice complexity to it. And just all around, I enjoyed this one. And you know what? Sam Adams, if I remember right, Brian, this is one that it's a coin toss each year whether or not we enjoy it. And
I think it can be, yeah.
It's been up there, and then sometimes it's been towards the bottom of the list.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
But yeah, for me, this one was a winner this year. Party Nate, what'd you think of this one?
I loved this one. I think it was, it's definitely in the top for me. And there's a roastiness to it. It definitely, I think the word I used when we were tasting was the word sophisticated. It hit all these marks, but at the same time, it was easy drinking and it was comfortable. I think the word is comfortable.
Comfortable.
Yeah.
Comfortable and sophisticated. I want to drink this beer now just hearing you talk about it, man.
But it's still an Oktoberfest. It's still a Marzen, so it's not like some armchair pretentious beer.
Sure. Yep. Gotcha. Brian, how about you? I
was also very much on the pro side of this. I very, very much like this. Definitely got a lot of stuff. I even noted the same kind of dryness on the palate initially. It's got that good, like, big toasted bread. Like, it reminds me of, I always think of the same bread, and I don't even know what it's called. I get it's brought out at the front of a steakhouse. It's got raisins in it. It's really dark in color. It's a little sweet, but
raisin
it's like
bread?
lot. Is it just a raisin bread? But I like whatever it is. The toast itself is very dark in color, so it's well roasted. The Maillard reaction is heavy with this, so I liked everything about this. I thought it was all the ones before it seemed like they were, oh, this is nice, and this is the first one that jumped out at me and saying, this is the Oktoberfest beer I'm looking for. This is a very good beer. So this was an early contender for number one for me.
Yeah, good stuff. Mike, Nate, what are your thoughts here?
This beer was top 3 for me. For me, it's one of my only notes I had on it was that it's colored like a Marzen, but it drinks like a Fest. And I guess I just mean that to say that it was so easy drinking. I didn't really have to think about it a lot. But this was the first one that we had in the lineup that I was really excited about. Early on, one was pretty quickly a contender, but this is the one that kind of really got me excited for the rest of the tasting.
Nice. Yeah, it was a good. I think we all agreed that was a nice beer this year. So going on, our number 6 beer was the Hacker Shore. Well, Mike Nate, I'm going to just come right back to you, man. What'd you think of that one?
This one, I got a little bit of hot burn on it. And then that detracted from the overall drinking experience. The hop presence made itself known pretty early on in the drinking experience, and it didn't really go away. So if I wanted an Oktoberfest, trying to masquerade as an IPA or maybe like a style of an IPA, then yeah, this would be the kind of beer that I want. But if I'm drinking a Marzen or a Festbier and I get that much of a hop punch to it, I didn't enjoy it as much.
Going too far, right?
Correct.
I got to say I agree with you on that. That's a note that I had on it. It was too much. I've got in quotes here. This one was just too much. I think the maltiness was a little too far. It was too bold, I said. Too bold on the malt flavor, too much. Grassy hops. I said the hops kill this one for me. Also, I actually put some vulgarity down in relation to this beer. So this one actually was bottom of the list for me. So, and that's the Hacker Shore. I'm surprised, but this one was bottom of the list for me. Just didn't do it for me at all this year. And again, another one that I always have high expectations for. In all honesty, this is usually one of the ones I look forward to the most, the Eyinger.
This is the Hacker Shore. Are we on the
We're on Hacker Good.
Shore.
Okay, I feel a little better about it now. So, all right, so the Hacker Shore. Yes. Okay, there we go. So, yes, this is the one. That was one that just didn't do it for me. Brian, how about you?
Yeah, and I think the Hacker Shore, we've had a lot of hit and miss with that. I think it's always been a mid-range or lower when we've had it in the competition, as I recall. I thought I'm going to surprise people because I do like hops. I do like hoppy beers. I thought the hops were too much for style. This was a little too much for it. I got a lot of kind of a bitter green apple hoppiness. I'm like, and this might be something I enjoy somewhere else, but it was not what I was looking for in this particular beer. It did have, as I sat in the finish, did have some nice little, like vanilla and maybe caramel notes at the end of it that I did get, but I just this was a pass for me, and it went pretty quickly towards the end of my list, unfortunately. Yeah.
There were some redeeming qualities to it. I mean, but I think especially comparing it to the other ones we had here, it just didn't hold up.
It wasn't. Yeah, it's not what I'm looking for. Honestly, it's just not.
Right. Party Nate, what are your thoughts?
I think the word I used when we were tasting it was the word straw. There was a greenness to it. It was definitely more bold. Definitely more bold. When you're looking for a Marzen or a Festbier, you're not looking for something that punches you in the face, and this kind of punched me in the face.
Yeah.
Brian mentioned it might have some redeeming qualities, but I don't think if I'm looking for an Oktoberfest, then I'm not going to look for something that this beer had. But I would enjoy it in a different context.
Understandable. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I agree that if you're not looking for the characteristics of the Oktoberfest beer in that if you want your hops, if you want something with some hops in it, if you want that little more bold, maybe if it wasn't presented as that style.
Yeah.
It wasn't bad.
It wasn't bad. It
just
was
not what I was
enjoyable,
looking for there.
but it wasn't what we were expecting.
Yeah.
If it was like a European brew pub beer that was kind of like you walked into a shop, it had a name, no real description on it, and you just drank it, and you're like, oh, this is a really interesting beer. Like if it's all about how it's
What
presented.
part of Europe?
Let's say Austria.
Czech Republic. Okay.
Let's say
all right.
Austria.
Austrian.
Let's go
Okay.
with Austria.
This would be great if it was an Austrian pub ale.
That's
is
right.
the point that
Just
we're,
to walk in
that we're trying to make
You just
here.
walk
Yeah.
into a pub. It's just got a name. You can't pronounce the name. You don't know what it is.
Flurgensnoozle.
You can barely understand how to even pay for it. You drink it, you're like, oh, this might come away as being one of the best beers you ever had. But if you're at an Oktoberfest tasting and it's served up, you're like, oh no, I think I'm going to pass.
And then you can be pretentious about it for the rest of your life.
Oh,
and you're like, well,
absolutely.
this doesn't compare anything to the Austrian Flurgensnoozle.
the Flurgensnoozle. You can't beat the Flurgensnoozle I had.
You can't.
You got to try it. You have to get over to Austria and have the Flurgensnoozle.
It's highly recommended. So we ought to start propagating like Yelp reviews and stuff with that. People will be looking for
For
it.
the
We'll just
Flurgensnoozle.
make up a pub over there and get everybody.
Give it
up
a real address
Yeah,
and everything.
absolutely,
Oh, yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Number 7 on our list, Yingling, Brian. And I think this is another one that can bounce around on the list for us as far as where it ranks.
Yeah.
How did Yingling treat you this year?
I got this one, as I mentioned earlier, I started noticing apple flavors and aromas in various beers to a certain extent. This one was the strongest red apple flavor I got of anything. And I didn't think it was a bad beer, but I wrote down, this is not the Oktoberfest you're looking for. And so I didn't have a lot of notes. I'm like, I don't hate this. I just like, this is not what I'm looking for.
Your decisions have been made. There's no point in
proceeding.
There, right?
I just moved on with my life, honestly.
Understandable, man. So looking at my notes, I remember saying on this one, I got notes of caramel and apple, but not what I would say like caramel apple. And so they were separate from each other, then not a cohesive thing. I got a buttery flavor in it and toast. And again, kind of like you said, Brian, this is just not what I'm looking for in this beer. And you know what? Like you, I'm just going to move along with my life. That's all I got to say about that.
So you had caramel and apples, and you're like, can I put those together? Like, no, you have to eat them separately.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's taking a bite of the apple, throwing a caramel in. But it did make me want a caramel apple.
Yeah.
For what that's worth. Yeah. Party Nate, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, apple was very, very strong. A few sips in, I started thinking this is tasting more and more like a cider.
Yeah.
But then it stayed a beer. I do think red apple was the strongest flavor in it, and it makes me think of fall, but it's not an Oktoberfest in my likening.
Okay, fair enough. Mike?
I'm going to be a broken record here and also say red apple, but for me it was more of the peel of the red apple, not really the meat necessarily. I got more of like the oil or like the essential flavor of what you think about when you are biting into a red apple.
Whispers of apple.
Yes.
Like astringency?
Memories of apple.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, not astringent.
This is now an ASMR video talking about apples.
They happen from time to time.
They do.
But it also finished dry. And so I think that's where Party Nate was talking about the cider influence of the beer. Overall, I think it's a great beer for the style. I don't think it's true to style, but I would enjoy this beer on a crisp fall evening somewhere in the mountains, maybe.
Of Austria?
Of Austria.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sitting in a rocking chair.
This is a great one to follow up the Flurgensnoozle.
Absolutely.
That, man. So, good stuff. The Ocho. Moving on to the Ocho, we got Hofbrau here for number 8. Y'all, I liked this one. This is another one. I'm going to say it's in my top 3. We'll break down our top 3 in a little bit, but this one made my top 3. I said it had a good, clean aroma. There were some that were more pronounced on the hops, more pronounced on the caramel. This was balanced. Had a really nice, clean aroma. I got, again, the caramel malt, the toastiness, and I made a note that this kind of had a creamy mouthfeel. It was a little another one that was a little softer on the palate that I enjoyed. I just thought it was really good. So overall, this one did well for me, and it did land in my top 3. Brian?
This is another one of the ones I successfully predicted was German. Just the aroma alone. Again, it had, I've traveled an ocean to get to you. I like this. This one jumped high up on my list. It seemed interesting that many of the early on ones stayed towards the top, but this one jumped and made it very close to the top. But definitely, it was great. This is the one that was dramatic because initially I was tasting it. Everybody else was saying how much they enjoyed it. I'm like, what are they drinking? I don't get this. And then I don't know what happened, but it kicked in, and then I started getting like a nice caramel, perry, malty thing going on, and I found it really to be enjoyable. And it went from being I don't get it to like I'm on board with it. So I did like this one a good deal. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Party Nate?
Pear was strong, and I really liked that. It was pronounced. It was soft. It was creamy is a good word in mouthfeel. This made my top 3. Very, very strongly in the top 3.
Strongly. Firmly in that top 3.
Firmly in the top 3.
Good stuff. Mike Nate, what'd you think?
This one also was in my top 3. I don't know where you guys are coming from getting pear on the nose. I got like bread crust on the nose. I got a very heavy-handed aroma of toast and crust of the bread. I did get the pear on the palate, but more towards the finish after I swallowed my sip. But overall, this was a really good beer for me.
Okay. Yeah. Good stuff, man. Good stuff. On to number 9, Bell's Brewery. Y'all, mine's simple here. I put too hoppy, and that's all I wrote down. So I'm moving on with my life. This one was too hoppy for me. It ran over everything else, and I just wasn't having it. Mike Nate, I'm just going to come right back to you, sir.
You're fine. I got no body on the nose, and on the palate when I was drinking it, spice astringent. I didn't really have much to say about this beer.
Okay, Fair enough. Party Nate.
Yeah, there was something herby or spicy about it. I think there was like a dry cocoa powder or like a marshmallow note that was there and then it was gone and then it was there and then it was gone. Not super fantastic, but I finished it.
Fair enough, man. You know what? I believe this is the only one that I actually dumped.
No, you dumped the next one. I think.
Was it the next
Yeah,
one?
I think so.
Everybody dumped the next
Based
one.
on the horrible notes I have on the next one, you may be right, Brian. But yeah. So I didn't dig the bells. Brian, what'd you think of the bells?
So I did get a little of the cocoa powder you were talking about. It wouldn't have been something I picked up, but when you mentioned it, I'm like, I kind of got it. In my note, I think that was the most relevant to what this is. To me, it tasted like a lot of fake ingredients, some adjuncts that didn't quite come together. Like I got spices, but not distinct, they did not seem to work together very well. Like none of it was believable and none of it seemed to work quite right.
I don't even believe
I
this,
don't
beer.
even believe you, beer. I think you're lying to me.
Liar.
And so while I didn't think it was a bad beer, it just like, this is not going to rank well. So I'm like, unfortunately, no on this one for
Just
me.
move on,
yeah,
right?
I'm just move on. Yeah.
No
Just
to the
move
fake
on.
beer.
Yeah, and I don't even know if it's
Say
fake. It's
no
just
to
like that's
fake
how it
beers.
came off to me. So
Well, y'all, to round out our 10 beers, number 10 was the Paulaner. And so that was the last one. One more from Germany. Again, 5-5 American versus German beers this year. Brian, Paulaner, what are your thoughts?
oh, it was this was the honey roasted farts one.
This, according to my notes, you're pretty accurate.
Unfortunately, this was a very
Yeah.
flatulent beer, and I have not good on here, and that it was Paulaner and a Marzen, and that's about it because I think I dumped mine. I did
Okay.
not proceed with it. I'm sad about that. Usually Paulaner is better, but this one was not very good in my estimation.
Fair enough. Party Nate, what'd you think?
I took one sip, thought this is sour and terrible, and I dumped it.
Fair enough, man. Fair enough. Mo Mike.
I took one sip. I said, this is sour. This is not good. And from an observation,
You didn't copy off your neighbor, did you, on this? test?
I was copying test
Okay.
answers from a neighbor.
Okay. That's
You were a couple seats away.
yeah.
You didn't see my notes.
Nate's talking about his beer, and he's like, well, on my notes on this one, it says, stop copying me. Quit reading my paper.
I'll beat you up after school.
Yes. I'm going to hit you with my Zelda sword.
my master sword.
Yeah. So all in all, not a fan.
Well,
Let's say
from
that.
my notes, I also notated that it was the only beer that had an around-the-table dump.
You know what? Yes. And y'all, just to round out the reviews on that one, I have 3 bullet points here. They are notes of flatulence, terrible finish, and no.
Yes. I want to say that, and I don't know if it's different, the giant one that's in the can. I swear I drank the giant Paulaner in a can and thought it was fine. It was actually enjoyable. I believe these are out of bottles. I have no idea if it's exactly the same one or not.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I forgot that I wanted to mention that. You talked about light struck on some of these.
Yeah.
That definitely could be the issue here.
Oh,
that could
be
definitely
yeah.
be a light struck issue. So I would definitely grab a can if I saw one out and
Because
try
I thought
that.
the can was fine.
Because that would
yeah.
if this is a light strike issue, that would definitely
Yeah.
keep us from having that problem there. So
Well, and Paulaner does those liter steins with a liter can of
Oh yeah,
Oktoberfest.
that's what I drank one of those.
yeah,
for
little
long
combo pack, right?
for Long Beer Friday. I went and got one, even though I didn't need the glass.
Well, how
So
was it?
I thought it was good.
Okay,
No, I
all right.
had it
Maybe we
recently.
got a light strike issue.
That's
here.
what I'm saying is I'm surprised that this did so poorly because I had one recently and I thought it was good. But yeah, I didn't think about the possibility of light strike glass versus can. The can's great, so I would recommend getting the can if you're going to try the Paulaner.
Yeah. That and that's going to be your honestly. If you can find Germans in a can, go that way. And I'm not even sure which ones they all do, but they're traveling across the ocean. And to be honest, we're just not going to get them at their prime. You're not going to get the German beers at their best.
It's like Germans are always better in a can.
I missed something because we got some people just laughing their tails off here. So
Germans in a can,
Yeah, Germans in a can.
Germans in a can.
Yeah.
Germans in a
like monkeys in a barrel.
Prince Albert. in a can.
Every
I
now
don't
and then
actually know.
people
Yeah,
get.
they've lost their.
You know
mind.
what? Let them enjoy it,
Yeah.
Brian. They thought it was hilarious. We're going to let them go with that. Yeah, I'm glad you guys enjoyed that one. I'm glad to provide some laughs. And moving along, because 2 of our guys are going loopy here, Let's get into our tops, man. Let's get
Let's do
into
it.
our top beers, Germans in a bottle as opposed to Germans in a can. Nate, Mike, what are your top threes?
So coming in at 3 was Victory Brewing Festbier. Number 2 was Hofbrauhaus Festbier, and number 1 was Samuel Adams Marzen.
There you go, man. Good stuff. What are the numbers here? Let's see, because I want to.
So yeah,
Because I think 3 out of the 4 of us had the same 3, maybe in a little different order.
Yeah.
Brian, you had one out of left field.
I had one that nobody else had.
All right, Brian, we're just going to jump over to you, man. What are your top 3?
My number 3 was Victory Brewing.
Yeah.
My number 2 was the Warsteiner Oktoberfest, which is the one that nobody else went for.
Yeah.
That's my bridging the gap between the Crispy Boys and Oktoberfest one, so I had to pick that.
Okay.
And my number 1 was Samuel Adams.
There you go,
Yeah.
man. There you go. Party Nate, what's your top 3?
My number 3 was the Hofbrauhaus, the pear and the toasty one. That was really, really good. Number 2 for me was the Sam Adams, and then number 1 for me was Victory.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
started off strong,
stuff.
and then we just never went up from there.
Never went there. Party Nate, I'm with you. Number 1 just out of the gate. And I tell you what, it was kind of unfortunate because I'm like, man, I hope this is just showing where we're going from here. This is a great one. I really enjoy this. And I didn't know if it was just my palate was ready for these beers or whatever, but no, it hung in. Number 1 was my number 1. Excuse me. My number 2 was the Sam Adams. And again, we're up and down on Sam Adams each year, but that did give my number 2 spot. And my number 3 was the Hofbrau, which was my only German on the list. So, but that, if we look at a cumulative score here, we're going to call it a tie for first place between the Sam Adams and the Victory as our group favorites here. And then in third place, we have the Hofbrau. That was a contender. And Brian, you threw, we're going to say fourth place. It was only one person voting for it, but technically that puts it in fourth place for us. You brought Warsteiner
I did,
to the list.
yeah. I brought him in.
So that's it. So y'all, if you're out looking for Oktoberfest beers, we dig them. We dig them. But we can recommend, our recommendation, Sam Adams is good this year. Victory is good this year. Hofbrau is good. And Warsteiner is good. And I'm going to try the Eyinger again, or not the Eyinger, the Paulaner.
The Paulaner.
I'm going to look for a can. I'm going to look for a German in a can and try that out.
I think just generally across the board, unless you specifically are looking for a little of that light struck, because I got that in, I'll say 2 out of the 3 German ones we had. And that one at the Paulaner, I didn't get that far. Everything else was, I never noticed that part of it. I assume it contributed. So a lot of these are available in the Tall Boys. So you can find a lot of every kind of German beer in Tall Boys. I get my Bitburgers in Tall Boys whenever possible.
That's right.
So yeah.
Brian's Bitburgers.
That's right.
And I think we make this offer every year, but Quick Trip, if you want to sponsor this show one year, we get your pretzels almost every year.
Yes.
To do this. So we always have
beautiful.
some bratwurst and we have some pretzels. We brought fish dip to the mix this year, and that was quite good.
Yeah, apparently I Googled it a little bit to see what the popular German appetizers are, so we had some authentic German foods to sample with this.
Yeah.
Trout dip is high up there. I didn't see trout dip, so I got Wahoo dip.
Right.
And Wahoo dip from Publix is quite nice. If you live near a Publix, go check that out and go get some Wahoo dip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we did it. It's a good way to start it. Again, we're going to be hanging out with Deer Beer Garden soon, and we're going to get all the Spätzle. I could have used some Spätzle.
Yeah,
They'll
some
have
Spätzle
some
would be
for us
nice.
there. Spätzle. And guys, any parting thoughts on any of this? Mike, Nate, anything to add or anything to wrap up?
I think, we talked about it a lot today. There's a lot of variety when it comes to your Marzen or your Festbier. If you don't like the heavier lagers, go the Festbier route. If you don't like the lighter lagers, go the Marzen route. But ultimately, everyone can have a great time when it comes to Oktoberfest beer.
It is. It's ready. Brian, how about you, man? Parting thoughts here?
Get Paulaner in a can.
There you go. Easy enough. Easy enough. Party Nate, other than pairing this with one of your housemates to snack on, what's your parting thoughts here?
My parting thoughts are that this is a season, and everybody's got their own opinions about these things. We bring to the table a certain palate, a certain idea, but our opinions aren't set in stone.
Yeah, mine are. I mean, you should definitely listen
Yeah,
to me.
no, it's Tim
to
Dennis,
me.
absolutely.
Yeah.
My opinion is set in stone. Is it
You know
gospel?
what?
I don't know.
You know what I'll say? I agree with you, Nate, but I'll throw this out. I think we're giving you good place to start. Like if you're like, look, I can only pick up one or two, trust us.
Yeah.
That these definitely stood out to us as some of the better ones. So if you've got to choose between one or two, and maybe the missus will only let you get 1 6-pack of beer, I think if you choose any of our top 3, you're gonna be doing all right. If you want German Hofbrau, because some people just want to get that German. You know, I want a German Oktoberfest. Hofbrau is going to be the one you want to go to this year, based on what we've found. So, but you know what? If you try one of these other ones that maybe we didn't love as much and you love it, let us know. Let us know. Tell us what you think. And guys, we did it. We made it another year. I didn't look up to see how many years this is, but I know 5 or 6,
4 or 5.
Yeah,
I'm actually
there.
not sure how many we've done, but
always a good
always
time,
fun.
man.
Yeah.
We always have a good time with this. So, Brian, thank you. Party Nate Donner, Nathan Donner, thank you, man, for joining us. Always a good time to have you here. Mo Mike Nate, appreciate it. Y'all, this has been our Oktoberfest blind beer tasting, mostly blind, mostly beer, paired with all the good things of the season. We hope y'all have a good week, and we'll see you soon. Prost.